Okay, now let's talk about base switching. Again, using that example of the tripod sweep where I've just knocked my partner down. And now we're in a relatively equal exchange. Just for the astute observers, Rory is on his hand and I'm on my elbow, which means that Rory has superior hip mobility. So there are advantages to this. There are also disadvantages because his leg is sort of on the bottom, so I can create more wedging pressure. Like Rory can't lift his leg up very well right now because I'm blocking it from the bottom and from the top. Whereas I can lift my leg up if I need to because Rory can only block it from one angle. So we both have advantages and disadvantages. I've got inferior mobility. Rory has superior mobility, but I've got superior lever control, even if only slightly. So just so you know, like it kind of works out to about even, but we're not exactly the same in our alignment.
For the purposes of a base switch, you know that I cannot control your other leg now.
Exactly. So because Rory's having to commit this hand, which is his cross grip, when I go to base switch, I've got, right now I'm in base on my right elbow. A base switch is me shifting my hip and going to the other side. If Rory lets go of my leg to go to the other side, I've won. So it doesn't matter if he base switches too. This is the advantage of being the initiating party in the sweep, is that usually, if not always, your partner will be recovering into base, whereas you're already going into base, which means you're one or more steps ahead. So when you go to base switch, you should be able to retain the advantage and simply complete the sweep. So literally all we're doing is, if my base is to my right, I switch my base to my left. And because, again, I've got the advantage, to deny my base switch, what Rory would want to do is lift my leg up. And if he can lift it up enough, he can put me on my back and he can recover. And certainly if I ignore him, that is what would happen. But you'll notice what had to happen. Rory had to switch hands to do it. So as I base switch, I'm shifting my weight not just to one side, but forward while retaining the grip. If I were to only, in this case, rotate like this and try to get up, Rory could lift my leg and maybe, now there we go. And now I lost that gripping advantage of the wedges, and now Rory's back into a strong position. So just be aware when we are base switching, although sometimes you will be able to just rotate your hips to the other side, you will often need to, as you switch, start driving forward, creating elevation, that sort of thing.
So I just want to rewind this for a sec for anyone that might even be need this broken down even simpler. If Rob is in this position here and he's performing a technical stand-up, the leg that's going to be against the ground here on the near side hip to the floor is the leg that needs to withdraw. He needs one leg as a frame so that he can now lift his hips with base, and this leg withdraws through. So if it comes through to the other side here, he does a technical stand-up. This leg has to withdraw. So my goal is to try and control this leg so that he can't do this, because my near leg is also on the ground here. If he controls this, we're both stuck here in this battle. What Rob wants to do with his base switch is take this leg from the leg that needs to withdraw to being the frame that generates base. And so what Rob can just do from here is just drive this into my hip, turn, and even if his leg's relatively extended, he's able to now just use base through me into the floor and now start to withdraw his leg here.
That's a super important thing that we try to get people to understand. That's why we give such a specific definition for base, which is it's a platform from which to apply and absorb force, as opposed to it's the ground. Your base is your contact with the ground. Because though it usually is, occasionally is the wall, and in this case, it's your partner. You will surprisingly often derive base from your partner's body, either via their stability against the ground or just via the pressure that they're generating into you, particularly from top. When somebody's driving pressure into you, you will use that as a platform to redirect your body.
This, the crazy idea in jiu-jitsu is trying to find efficient ways to complete your movement. And so as white belts and blue belts and something
not efficient,
you just keep driving into each other and you're like, how do I overwhelm this other person? And then when you're shown the idea, well, how about you just switch your base to the side? Now you can easily withdraw your leg. It's like, that is absolutely mind-blowing. And so the one thing that you'll learn as you get more and more comfortable with this is tactically what's going to happen is you're going to have your leg in different positions as you base switch, and you might end up putting yourself in different guards. And so you're obviously going to want to build awareness to that to make sure you're not driving yourself deep into issues or putting yourself into leg lock threats.
Yeah.
But you'll find better ways to avoid those issues so you don't get tangled up at all, or you'll have to make those tactical calls where, well, I'm still at least completing a sweep and getting on top,
But I'm not advancing my position as much as I want.
and so it's like you'll still get your points or whatnot, and you'll just have to make sure that you obviously don't do a base switch to then giving up a heel hook or something like that.
Yeah, so
You'll
like
get better at
I'll give a different example of a base switch that would be more high risk, but under some circumstances would potentially advance. So I can base switch going to my other side. In this case, and this is a little bit of a post switch as well, but we'll talk about that in the next video. But I could turn like this and switch my grip. And now I base switched into a guard pass. So a sweep and a guard pass. But I turned my back to do it. So if I go like this and I lose this control for a second, all of a sudden I'm in a lot of trouble. I use that movement, but I have to hopefully develop the judgment to know when to use that movement. So
Or from here, for me, like when completing like a sweep here, sometimes depending on if you've pulled my leg off here with the tripod sweep, when I'm doing a base switch, I'll happily put my leg right here in base,
Exactly.
which is going to end up into a single leg X. If I ended up just getting reaped immediately in heel exposure, that would be unacceptable.
Yeah.
But the confidence of knowing what I'm putting myself into, being like, no, I'll gladly take the sweep to get on top, to put weight through my leg, and I know how to defend this stuff.
Same thing. That's a movement that we both use a lot because we're highly confident that we're not going to get heel hooked from a standard Asher or single leg X. So that's how we use it. So we're like, again, we're trying to give you an idea of this is what this is. There will be different expressions of it. Again, we'll be going over that in greater detail in some of the specific sweeps that we go into down this module. This is going to be a long module, I'm realizing, as we continue to film this. But anyway, we'll go into more detail on that. But just know that there's no one version of it. You're transferring your base from one alignment where you're trying to withdraw one leg into another alignment where you're basically withdrawing the other leg, or removing the necessity for a withdrawing leg by basing forward in that second example. But I'm still switching my base. I'm not just staying in the same position and trying to withdraw my leg. So any version of that, usually it's a hip to hip switch. In this case, it's a hip to the other hip. So like I'm still in that case switching my base from my right hip to my left hip. It's just in the second example, I'm turning completely in the other direction, and now my base ends up on this side, and then I'm advancing forward. So the concept is always the same. You're just switching your base from one hip to another, but how you execute it with your movements is going to change dramatically as you gain experience.